summoned you here for a purpose.
TransformYourGame.net.
Welcome one, welcome all, and welcome back to the 22nd episode of the Transform Your Game podcast. My name is Richard, and I'll be manning the helm as your host and moderator here today. Alongside me are two of my three co-hosts that are more than meets the eye, Kent.
All hail Megatron!
And Kai.
The way of the samurai is found in death.
Joel is absent this week. Real-life demands really do get in the way from time to time, but we missed him and his hey there just as much as all y'all listening do. Now, I bet I'm not wrong in guessing that there's some of you out there that are also realizing that, hey, didn't you guys introduce a fifth member of your team last week? Where's Matt? What gives? He's both funnier and better looking than your current moderator. Well, while your estimation of our esteemed newest member in the ranks is accurately high, Matt is pretty busy in regard to just life in general right now, college and all that jazz. He'll swap in for one of us, every so often. So you'll get to hear an even broader array of perspectives at those times, which is something that's great, right? It's more information. In the meantime, we get to keep his insight and creativity all to ourselves in our group chats. What you do get, however, dear listeners, is just about everything the three or four of us, depending on how many people can make it in a week, that we can muster in regard to the topics we cover both today and every episode from here on out. And the past ones, not leaving those out. We do hope that suffices while you await Matt's glorious return in the not-too-far future, and Joel's as well. First up, in housekeeping, the annual Extra Life campaign has been active and kicking for a little while now, and they've already raised a solid amount. I think it was like $1,200, $1,400 last time I checked, for the Children's Miracle Network of Hospitals. We did, we announced this last week and broadcast it to you guys, and many of you have probably already heard it mentioned somewhere or another already, but the team over at Arbitrary Hero, who incidentally also create content for the Transformers TCG that we all love so much, holds this drive annually as a way to help members of the gaming community, like ourselves, give back a little, often by just engaging with the type of things that we already enjoy. If you feel compelled to help, give what you can. Every little bit helps. All right, next up on the agenda, in a bit of tournament news, the team over at VectorSigma.info is actually hosting a Wave 5 constructed tournament for their tournament tier patrons. Both Kai and I will be participating in what looks to be somewhere around like a 32-man field, with some serious competition battling it out. Now, Kai, if I can address you for a minute, both you and I already queued for the upcoming quarterly invitational, like every that the first couple events qualify top finishers for. However, both of us are playing in this event anyway. Don't worry, listeners. If we do end up finishing well, our invites are going to pass down to whoever is in the next set of people. So I just want to ask you, Kai, what's your motivation for participating, and what do you hope to get out of the tournament itself?
Mainly just to prove that I'm a consistent topper. Like I did well at Gen Con, figuratively speaking, because I queued at the top first Swiss or whatever, got top 8 at that, and then I only got top 32 at Gen Con, which is still good, but not what I wanted. But I'm just looking to expand my repertoire of tops, basically.
Don't forget PPT Dallas, my friend. You took that down.
Yes, I did take that down. But then I didn't do anything at EI, so...
Well, in your defense, you were trying to play Soundwave, and Soundwave is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, honestly, I think I mentioned this before, I didn't know there was any kind of prizes for this. I really was joining the tournament tier and trying to play in these because I miss competition so badly. I don't think I realized how much in my day-to-day life I tried to compete in things as a way of both of satisfaction and engaging my brain, challenging myself. And I was looking through the list of the first tournament that they held, and it was a lot of people who have either played or have watched play and are some really awesome competitors and good people overall. And I just thought that was something that I really wanted to get in on, help keep myself sharp, so I can both pass on insights to the people listening at home, and that I can help, us secretly break the format in our behind our closed doors, behind our iron curtain of secrecy. Anyway, speaking of tournaments and recaps and such, Kai and I actually did record a rundown of us thinking through and building our top 8 pools from the aforementioned sealed tournament that we just played in. You can go check that out over on our YouTube channel, also by the same name as the cast and stuff like that, transformgame.net. but hopefully you'll be able to glean some valuable insights from our discussion there. I know it was a blast to film, and I also know that both of us misbuilt our pools.
Such is the case.
I know, by like 1 or 2 cards, but I mean, everything matters, right?
Yeah.
That's honestly everything we've got for housekeeping right now, other than reminding you guys out there that the new Transformers Netflix series releases July 30th. So just about 2 weeks from recording this.
Can't wait.
I know, it looks so sick. I'm really pumped. Our topic for today is an expanded analysis of one key manner of approach that we as a team are using to attack what is thus far known as the Titan Masters attack metagame. Pardon me. Kent, why don't you do the honors in kicking off the actual discussion?
All right, awesome. So last podcast, we talked a little bit about the 3 pillars of the metagame. The entire metagame is really centered around these 3 bots, Sky Shadow, Perceptor, and Horri-bull. And many decks in the current format revolve around one or more of those 3 pillars being on your either on your team or your opponent's team. We'll get into this later in the podcast, but Quake is quickly starting to climb up there. There might be a 4th pillar here pretty soon.
Yeah, so just to go quickly over some of the characters, I'll talk about Sky Shadow. So what Sky Shadow does well, first off, he starts as 2 bots, and when one of them gets KO'd, you combine into the Sky Shadow Titan Combiner duo Titan Master thing, and that guy, yeah, a mechanic.
He's every mechanic in the game. He's got Pierce, he's got Bull, he's got Tough, he's got Titan Master, he's a Combiner, he's got a Stratagem.
Yep, he's got it all. He's got the 8 attack, he's got the Pierce 4. When he swings, he hurts, and
he does.
And he loves peace through tyranny.
Yes. Just the next point that I was going to talk about. So Peace through Tyranny is a card that has always gotten stronger as the game has gone on. First through Wave 3 with Battle Masters being able to get extra attacks and a weapon. And then now with Titan Masters, where you could get an additional body from playing the Peace through Tyranny off of the Titan Master itself. But when it comes to Sky Shadow, you're not just getting a little dinky, like 1 3 attack bold, 1 whatever Bob. You're getting this 8 attack bold 2 Behemoth, and on top of that, you get a free bolt of lightning on Autobots, which is crazy good. So he just does all these things, and when he dies, because he's a Titan Master, he comes out, Ominous will pop out, and that's 2 Pierce 4, easily to get to Pierce 4. So it's just a lot of fantastic, strong elements in this character.
Think about how many games you have won or lost by an Ominous.
Yes.
Cannot count on my fingers.
It's literally, if you give me
fingers and toes, that's still not enough.
Every finger and toe that's currently in this podcast, not enough.
Not enough.
Like that guy is. I think he might be better than we're all giving him credit for. I think like we're spoiled at the 3-star heads book just because of like Grax being so impressive. But like Ominous is no freaking slouch, man. Like I think hitting that 3-point health threshold is important. Like the fact that he's naturally wants to be aggressive. He's a relevant attack when he pops off. Okay, I'm not gonna keep us here forever. I actually wanted to talk about one of the other pillars. I wanted to talk about Perceptor, affectionately known as Percy, and what he kind of does well as a pillar. So I wrote an article not too long ago about analyzing the game through the lens of stages. So if you're going to carry out a game to basically like the very, very late game stage, which is really just saying that assuming that the number of turns is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10 for each player, there is no better character than Perceptor in that long run, as long as you can keep him alive and well. Because his attack scales very rapidly over the course of the game, and as it does, you're actually also giving yourself added knowledge of what's in your deck. So basically what you're seeing is you're seeing him capitalize on 2 resources. So he's improving your overall combat resource by having basically the best attacker in the long run that you could possibly have on your team. He's also making sure that your hand stays full by using his flip ability. Now, in doing so, he's really flip intensive, so you have to keep that in mind when building lineups around him. But functionally, there is no more inevitable character than Perceptor in the game. And he's so efficient at doing that, he actually turns on and he becomes like a relevant, threatening character in the mid game. He doesn't even have to wait until that really, really late stage game where you've kind of set up an impenetrable wall, a la, let's say, like the old Jetfire decks from the previous wave. Perceptor gets you there basically in the middle part of the game. You're already at a point where things are really starting to turn the corner. So I think that's one of the things that he really does well, and he kind of outshines other card advantage engines in this aspect.
Cool. And the last pillar, horri-bull, of course. I mean, the talk of the town, also among Sky Shadow and Perceptor.
And Ken's favorite card.
Yeah, not really. I just feel like he does too much for free. Just by playing the game, you get all this free damage, and it's like, whatever your best character is, let's subtract like 5 health off of him before the game even starts, because that's basically how you have to play around it. With more and more horri-bull decks now running bashing shields for all the holomatter projectors that have been popping up, it's almost like this no-win scenario against horri-bull. There's no way to really shut him off permanently.
What does horri-bull really do well, though? Like, what makes him a pillar?
What makes him a pillar is just like all this free damage just for playing the game. Oh, I played a RR Disruptor Blade or a Fusion Borer. Cool, take one. And now I'm playing Rock Toss or Mag Ray or Precision Fire or Fight for Position. Cool, all right, take another one. And now I'm going to flip, and that damage that horri-bull just took, now I'm going to move it to you. And it's just, he does too much. I feel like if he didn't have the flip ability to move damage, or if it was only black upgrades that triggered him or black actions, it would be way more fair. But as it is, for 6 stars, it's ridiculous. You cannot keep your characters alive. And I'm a big fan of direct damage, and we're going to go into more detail later in the podcast, but it just feels like there's no real answer to it. Reflect damage, I think, is incredible versus Sky Shadow. Not that great versus horri-bull. And take cover, since it doesn't have a green pip on it, you may never see that card. You might have 3 copies, you might play 5 games and might not ever get to play it. Maybe you never drew it. Things like that make horri-bull just pretty crazy, especially when he has maybe his best partner, which is Grax. He just gets to live for a long time. The 2 defense also in alt mode is just like, what? You just can't, it's just so hard to kill him.
Yeah. It's actually something I wanted to talk about all 3 of the pillars we'd mentioned here. So I don't know that we've talked about this much, but it seems to me that the characters who are powerful attackers have had a slight uptick in just the average base defense that they've been given.
Yes.
Have you guys noticed that too?
Yes.
Like Perceptor, both Sky Shadow pieces, horri-bull, all have 2 defense. Fangry has 2 defense. Quake has 3 defense, or defense in the mode that he's normally in, right? Like, that is just basically the in the old 1375 decks, like, they were oftentimes attacking with 1, if not 2 characters whose base attack was 3, right? So, like, but those characters are basically, like, out of the format. You can't play them because they don't do any damage, right? Like, you're dealing 1 damage when you're attacking with no weapon. Like, you better be 2 stars, like, I don't know. That's one of the other things that I wanted to point out, is that characters with kind of like, where it seems like their base defense is maybe a point higher than it probably should be, is something to keep an eye out for, because it's a way to kind of like, I don't know, to give you just like a slight edge in mirrors of aggression. Okay, I think we're probably done just talking about the pillars. At least the old school pillars, right, Kai?
Right.
Yeah, we've got a new up-and-comer, Quake, who is actually secretly my favorite character from this set, but that's besides the point. Quake is an interesting lineup because generally the most popular lineup we've seen with Quake currently is the what we refer to as Remember the Titans, but it's basically Quake with Grax, Fangry with Kreb, and then Horri-bull with Briscoe. And those are all the HP heads, and those are all the small Titan masses that you can play. So it just basically combines into this 6-wide team, quote unquote 6-wide, that is punching you really hard. If you kill their characters and you get punished for playing the game because Quake just explodes everywhere. Horri-bull's doing his thing, of course, because But yeah, what is this team line up and what do they do?
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
So I think like probably the thing that's most apparent is that it's really an orange deck, right? So like Quake, Fangry, Horri-bull are all reasonably well statted on the attack side of things, right? Like I think it's 4 or 5 basically in every single mode, unless you get down to like the point where it's just Quake and you flip him back to his alt mode and he's got 6 attack, which is pretty sick. But those characters all have like basically the best cars attack values already printed on them with better health pools and higher defense and better effects. Anyway, but so that's probably what they do. They really like summarize as or under that category. But you have to play kind of like a requisite number of black pips to really maximize your Horri-bull that's part of your lineup. Even if you're really just guaranteeing that you trigger him once a turn when you're actually playing upgrades and actions, that's still probably good enough just because of like the average output of damage that they have. The other thing that they do, and you mentioned this actually when you're talking about the heads that they have, Kai, but they're playing all the HP heads. So I don't know if people at home were doing math while we were talking about this, but Quake with Grax is 13 HP, right? And then Fangry plus Kreb is another 13 HP. That's 26. Then you have Horri-bull with Briscoe. That's 12 more HP. So that's 38 HP base before the heads actually pop off. And the heads are +3, +5, and +2 respectively, which is 10 more HP. That means this deck has 48 health on top of there being 3 stopgaps on the way there, which is an absolutely unfathomable amount of health, right? Even if we look at the deck that was previously already getting the most health in the game, which was the Wave 4 the EI champion, right? With Flame War, who was 10, Galaxy Prime, who was 21, and then the Skydive, who's 7 health, right? 8 health. 8 health. And then you would, if you really suit them all the way up, and you would have 3 energy packs onto your Optimus Prime, you got to like 52 health. The difference between that, which is the absolute end game of a deck that was designed to maximize this, versus a deck that just kind of incidentally has a ton of health, is 4. And the 52 health deck doesn't have any stopgaps. Like, there's nothing preventing you from just like KOing all the way through a character's health pool, where there is with Titan Masters. So those are the two things that they kind of do well. Is they're a pretty much dedicated orange deck with requisite black pips because there's not much opportunity cost to playing them, and then they really lean into the how much health can I play on my team aspect of things.
Well, in addition to all the health, one thing that the Remember the Titans deck does so well is all of this direct damage and out of combat damage. Not only can they hit hard, especially Fangry in combat, but like you have all the Quake triggers and Horri-bull on top of that. So I mean, every single turn you're dealing tons and tons of direct damage, and it can just spiral out of control so fast with the Quake triggers. I mean, and I want to mention too, like, this was one of the first decks that Kai came up with in spoiler season. Like, they had spoiled these 3 characters, Quake, Fangry, and Horri-bull. And literally that week that the last one was spoiled, he brought this deck up to Generation X, our local game store, and just annihilated me over and over and over. And it was just like, I can't stop it. Not only is there so much direct damage and not enough ways to combat that aspect of the game, but I felt like I was playing against 6 characters. You know, I mean, it's naturally just 6 wide because of all the heads popping off. I mean, it's one thing when you have to deal with a Titan Master. Okay, they're 3 wide, but really they're 4 because after I kill their Titan Master, I got to deal with the head. Okay, well now you're 3 wide, but then there's 3 heads to deal with. Once you plow through all of that insane health, if you can, then you've got to deal with the attacks from the little guys too, more Quake triggers, because you're obviously not attacking with Quake until you absolutely have to. You want that guy to be, hidden behind a wall. It's just, this deck is phenomenal, and kudos to Kai. I've been thinking about this deck ever since he started playing it back then, and then we've tweaked it, and yeah, it's incredible.
Okay, so we know that the Titans deck does all these aspects of the other decks probably pretty well at attacking the 3 pillars. So what can we take from it to apply into future decks? Well, one of the things that we can do is take an old example that we like to constantly reference, Burgos Bull.
So true.
Have we ever talked about that deck on this podcast?
Only every single episode, including the one where we interview other people.
That's true.
It was just so surprising. I think we're just so impressed by it forever and ever.
Yeah.
He's also just a cool dude. Like, David's just so cool that I don't mind giving him clout every single time we go on this thing.
Agree.
Personally. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, Kai. I know you were in the middle of something.
No, you're good. Back on topic.
Stay on target. We're too close. Stay on target.
So Burgos Bull, if you don't know, is an orange-black aggro deck where basically every time you swung with a character, you were swinging for 6 Pierce 6 or 8 Pierce 8. You were basically trying to match attack with Pierce to get guaranteed damage. And at the time when it was originally revealed at TPT Orlando, David told us that it was one of the worst matchups for that deck is the fact that it actually falls prey to real aggro decks, quote unquote, like Bugs or Airstrike Patrol. So taking that into consideration, we have basically this shell that can run orange, like pure orange with black sprinkled in, or orange black, and you have the 6 wide, so there's really no way for you to get more than 6 wide in this game. So having that type of aggression in the 6 wide deck is just really strong, and being able to lend itself to more aggressiveness, because every time a kill occurs on your side of the field or your opponent, Quake is quaking. So it basically means every attacker on your side and your opponent's side becomes relevant all of a sudden, and it just gets really crazy and nuts.
I totally agree. One of the things I think we kind of mentioned that I kind of mentioned this in the last segment, but I want to talk about the fact that, like, the principle of what the builds of Quake are trying to do is they're trying to maximize the average attack or average damage per character across the lineup and the average HP across the lineup. So the characters are not like the absolute best attackers for their stars. That's just not what they are, right? I think people were afraid that Fangry was going to be such when he was first revealed, and you're like, oh my god, everyone has an 8-star or a 12-star or, on their team, but not anymore. Everyone's 7 stars, so he never has ult.
Yeah.
So what I was trying to say with this is that basically, like, these characters are solid attackers, but they're not the best attackers. Here's the kicker, though. They're solid attackers who basically, across the lineup, with the exception of Fangry, have access to incidental non-attack damage that they deal to all the opposing characters whenever, basically at will, for just playing the game. They have all this incidental damage built into, to borrow a word from, if you haven't been playing a lot of League of Legends, built into their kit, right? Like into like the totality of their characters. And so like the damage per character that you're actually dealing out is really, really high. And on top of that, we already addressed the fact that they have incredible HP, right? Like they have a 48 HP health pool with 3 stopgaps included, and they're utilizing their own health as a resource because of the fact they have these non-attack damage triggers that are supposedly symmetrical. But since they have higher health pools, and because they're choosing where the damage is going a lot of the time, they're breaking the symmetry on those actual effects. On top of the fact that Horri-bull literally kind of heals himself over the course of the game. But that's neither here nor there. But, I think what we can take from this, on top of the fact that these characters have naturally high defenses, like I mentioned, they're pushed to 2 and 3, pretty much across the board, is that characters are getting diminishing returns on defense. So if diminishing returns on defense are something we're seeing, that means the actual axis that you're trying to improve on to be a better deck in the metagame is the attack HP axis per star, right? So the efficiency in number of stats of both average damage output per star of the character and average HP per star of the character. I've mentioned before that one of the things I'm interested in using or trying to find a place for in this metagame is the idea of a deck that plays Fangry with Grax as the head, because that in and of itself gives you a 9-star character with 16 health, which is unprecedented in the history of the game thus far. There is no character who is better per star for health. The thing about that is you need to find characters that complement him, and you need to make sure you set up your deck in a way where you are actually trying to make sure that since you've naturally leaned on the health aspect of your team, that you are being able to generate damage through the cards in your battle deck. You're playing things like head-on collision, leap into battle, or grenade launcher, reckless charge. Like you're dedicated to pumping out damage with both your upgrade play and your action play, and you're probably going to have to include examples of non-attack damage that the Horri-bull deck doesn't have to play. I mean, like, you'll probably have to be including one shell stands, one shell falls, because you're leaning into health, so you're going to be having to do things like break the symmetry on how much damage is being dealt to your own team. Those are the type of things you're trying to maximize the axes that you're trying to operate on. You're trying to literally optimize for the attack HP per star efficiency of your character lineup. Was that a mouthful?
Maybe a bit, but it all makes sense and well spoken. And let's not forget, like, this deck plays Horri-bull. It's not just a Quake deck, though I do feel that Quake is the centerpiece of Remember the Titans. But, like, with the 3 pillars, Sky Shadow, Perceptor, and Horri-bull, like, Horri-bull is going to give you the maximum bang for your buck in direct damage, even maybe more so than Sky Shadow. But the Sky Shadow Horri-bull deck, the SS Bull, it's really a Sky Shadow deck. It's focused around that character, and Horri-bull's just there to kind of like ping all your guys out of the way and make it really difficult for you to deal with the Sky Shadow Plane Pierce, and then the Pierce from Fusion Borer, and then the other black pips that just get flipped naturally through battle. And then the Sky Shadow Perceptor deck, or what we call the SS Percy, like, you're just digging for that Peace Through Tyranny and other powerful cards. It's very much a toolbox deck, whatever you need in that situation. And then if you can get the extra turn from Peace Through Tyranny, yeah, it's probably game over. The Percy Pounce deck, which is Perceptor, Pounce, and Night Racer, is also it's centered around Perceptor and just maximizing what you can do with all that card draw. And hey, almost half the deck is secret actions. And then you're getting to play, more and more of them. And that enhances Pounce, that enhances Night Racer, helps you protect all of them, because Pounce does not have a ton of health, and Perceptor, of course, the longer you keep that guy around, it's just, again, it's that cascading inevitability that Richard was talking about, where if you don't kill that guy quick, it's going to get real nasty. Quake is a true and dedicated Horri-bull deck. But I feel like Quake kind of is the central character just because he's the one that you're wanting to protect. He's the one that's like all this damage just over and over and over and over. And you might get lucky and play one of your 3 take covers in that game. All right. You stop the onslaught of madness for a turn, but what are you going to do the next turn and the next and the next? And it just feels like that deck is so good about wiping the board so quickly. And Kai, could you refresh us on what the ruling is with Quake and his damage and how that works with the heads popping off and triggers?
Yes. So basically, the game works in you have to resolve all of the active players' triggers first. So if you're the active player and you have Quake, let's say you swung into their opposing Fangry or something. So it would be your triggers, and you kill the Fangry, of course. You kill,
Of course.
So you kill the Fangry, you get the Quake trigger, and the head trigger of Fangry on the opposing team also has a trigger. So you would basically have to resolve Quake first as you are active player. If it was the other way, where if they did like PTT or something on Fangry while you have Quake in body mode, then they would have to resolve their head trigger first and deploy the head, and then Quake would trigger. So it's basically like if you're the active player, you have to resolve all your triggers. And there are more complex scenarios on top of that, such as if you have a head trigger and your character is dying, then it's like you can do all your Quake stuff first and then deploy the heads. And yeah, it gets really confusing really quickly. But basically, just remember you have to resolve all active player triggers first and just take it slow, because this deck can get very confusing really quickly.
Ask your friends. Use your lifelines.
Yeah, I play a lot of games in my head, and this deck is definitely something that taxes that ability. And because there's just so many things that can happen and go certain ways depending on the different outcomes of what you and your opponent are doing. And what's so great about this deck, I mean, we all know that horri-bull is kind of busted, right? And it really just amplifies all the non-attack damage. Also, while being able to hit with Quake's body mode, which what is another thing that's really, really cool about Quake is that then if he's the last guy standing, all right, let's transform this dude back into alt mode, and now he gets a bonus. I mean, like, it's like they gave the character everything.
Yeah, I think before I move on to the next thing, I really just want to say, like, I think it's so interesting that the Quake deck, I think we all agree, like, Remember the Titans is a Quake deck, but the fact that, like, it's really inspired by the idea of maximizing the types of play patterns that horri-bull, like, incentivizes, right? Like, it's just leaning into how do we double up on the non-attack damage theme. And it turns out that Quake is just a better centerpiece than horri-bull is in that shell, which I think is really interesting. Anyway, I think the next thing we want to talk about really is we've talked about the principles of what the metagame is. We've talked about what like the first step of what we would call like the first evolution of the metagame has shown us about like what types of things can be used to tackle the metagame as it exists. So I think that what we need to do next is ask ourselves, how can we use this, right? The idea of maximizing on the axis of attack and HP per star as a point of efficiency is a way to attack this metagame. The idea of being a better true aggro deck is an angle of attack to this metagame. And the idea of finding better ways to capitalize or to optimize on the unique strengths of each of the 3 pillars or 4 pillars, depending on how you view Quake, is another way that you can do this. So guys, given what we've talked about today, given those points, what would you be playing in a tournament tomorrow, a competitive level tournament tomorrow?
So I actually have 2 front runners in this scenario, because we've discussed that these decks are basically they're aiming to be as wide as possible while being as aggressive as possible outside of maybe SS Percy and Percy Pounce. But those decks are in a different shell that we could talk about in a little bit. But basically, so the pillars, horri-bull and Sky Shadow, and aggressive Percy decks for this sake. They want to be 6 wide as much as possible. So using that to our advantage, we can play. I have an airstrike patrol deck that I really like. Joel has actually posted an article on it, and that was the first iteration of where that idea came from. But basically, this idea would be where you're playing 12 double oranges because you're playing Night Racer, you're playing her Stratagem, you're playing Villainous Spotlight, and then you're playing Tailwind, Night Flight, and Fangry with Kreb. And then that actually gives you 2 extra star cards to play on top of the 4 other star cards that you have. So you're playing 6 extra double oranges. So all your characters can swing for massive amounts of damage just out of nowhere with even like Bold 1 from Night Racer.
Or from Focus Fire, a singleton Focus Fire.
Yes, even that too. But what's cool about this deck is you can actually transform that onto its tail by siding into 6 wide. So to do that, you basically just take out the stratagem, both stratagems, you take out the 2 extra star cards, and you would have to also take out the other star cards because you can't legally play them anymore. And then you would side into Stormcloud, and that would basically allow you to be a 6 wide deck to compete onto the same level as Quake or horri-bull on those fronts. And because you're also Airstrike Patrol, you have triple oranges, so you can basically out aggro them in the sense of being 6 wide as well. You just don't have the stop gaps that they have with the HP pools and whatnot. Another deck that I'm also considering is the Blaster deck, and specifically the version I'm playing has Wind Charger, but you can also play Fangry, and I think Fangry might be better for this current metagame because being able to swing into whatever character you want for turn 1 while also getting a potential extra card to pump that Fangry's attack because you flip Blaster and deploy Ramhorn, you get to play the top card of your deck. So if you get something relevant like Supercharge or Reckless Charge, you're swinging, so let's say Reckless Charge, you're swinging with 8 Bold 3, turn 1 into their centerpiece character, and that centerpiece character probably might die. And if not, then you have One Shot Stands and Canyon Crashes in the deck to help finish it off. So those 2 types of decks, while the Blast deck isn't 6 wide, it's actually 4 wide. It plays into the HP side of things where your characters are protected from direct damage at the start of the game because they start into Blaster. So you're preserving some HP that way, but also that Blaster extra flips basically make up for the lack of width by just making sure you kill characters immediately. So those are the 2 front runners. A bit rambly, but yeah.
Well, I think my response is going to be much shorter than that, but I actually really would play Remember the Titans at this point. I'm not sure how popular as a deck archetype it is quite yet. I think it's I know people are talking about Quake here and there. I'm sure that people are right on the cusp if they're not there already. But I really like that deck so much, and I am not an aggro player. And one of the things I want to say is WotC and the development team for this game need to be commended for building this deck archetype, because I think in the past, one of the reasons why I haven't liked playing aggro in either Magic or this game is because it doesn't require me to think about anything. Draw a card, play it. Draw a card, play it. Attack. I mean, like, that's not fun for me. And this deck makes you think. You need to think 1, maybe 2 turns ahead, sometimes even 3, to really get the full scope of what picture you want to paint on the battlefield on your first turn, your second, your third, your fourth, your fifth, and what might your opponent do to stop it, because the deck can really snowball quickly. But if you're not thinking about what the optimal play is on each turn with each card that you draw in each scenario, the deck can, I mean, it'll still be fine, it's still good, but I believe the The fact that it just requires you to think and not just mindlessly play the game is something that I really appreciate. I feel like this game is just getting better and better and better. And thank you, Wizards of the Coast, for making it that way.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Kai. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I really love that deck too. The only thing I'm wary of is we don't know how many other people are into the deck, and Quake mirrors are very gross if you were not prepared for them.
Yes,
So,
yes.
While I'm not saying that I'm not prepared for it, I don't want to subject myself to that if I don't have to. So that's why I didn't suggest Quake as a potential deck.
I think
for me,
one more reason I would play it too is I don't feel that there's solid answers to the deck. Like, again, back to the take cover thing, you could have 3 copies, might not ever play it. Okay, you're running Hollow Matter, cool, Bashing Shield, and what about your other characters? Because they're all taking 1 also. There's just not a lot of solid answers to this deck, and that is also a reason that I would consider playing it. The only answer is try and out-aggro them. Okay, you can try to flip all those double oranges or bold a million with your guys, but your characters have so much health. Yeah, with that 48 health total, I mean, that's really hard to do. And then, even if you do kill one of their guys, and you're not going to kill Quake because they're not going to expose Quake, then you're playing their game anyway of KOing characters and now getting all these Quake triggers. So it's kind of danged if you do, danged if you don't. So that's something I really like about this deck archetype.
Yeah, I think the Quake deck is super interesting, right? Like, Kai and I started building it like around the same time. I think we even had, I think we posted lists in the same Google Sheet workbook in our Google Drive, like within like 2 or 3 days of each other, and a couple lists leaning more orange, a couple lists leaning more black, but ultimately like they're operating on the same idea. I've loved it since even then. It's really fun, and it feels really powerful. I think as far as like decks I would actually take here though, in all honesty, I think that I might still consider Sky Shadow Bull. I think I still might consider the deck that we have internally called Incredible for a really long time. I think that deck is just super solid. I've got a couple of builds of it that I'm really happy with a couple of inclusions that I haven't seen people use that I think are maybe kind of necessary to combat the things you're starting to see come out of other decks. I also am interested in the Airstrike Patrol deck that Kai was talking about. He and I played a couple of test games of that deck the other day, and it looked really, really solid. It just looks like a deck that is powerful in a way that is kind of unique. I am a little wary of the vulnerability of Tailwind, because once Tailwind is dead, your Night Flight is the most useless piece of garbage cardboard you've ever seen in your entire life. It's horrible. No, it's not horrible. Horrible's good in this game. Anyway, the last deck I'm interested in considering is an aggressive SS Percy list. So like one that's slanted orange, like one of the ones that was originally being popularized by Stefan Pinkney, Def TF, S. The man himself. He was playing pretty early on in the game some orange slanted SS Percy decks that would have a couple of blues in them, some end hostilities, maybe like the sturdy armor here and there, stuff like that. And I think that's something that's really interesting to consider. Those are the 3 decks that are kind of like my front runners right now. I wanted to make Heal Optimus work, but as Kai proved to me in our testing very recently, I don't have it. Maybe there's a list out there with him, but I haven't found it. So
yeah,
make of that what you will.
Oh yeah, I think that character just needs more cards for a repair focused deck to really work. I mean, I get, just to echo what you said, maybe there's a list out there now, but it feels like he just doesn't have all the tools to really make it a tier 1 deck at this point.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that'll bring us to our viewer question for the week, actually. So this week's viewer question isn't so much a direct take from my last post in the Facebook group. It's more of an amalgam of a common theme amongst the comments that were there, or several of the comments that were there. I'm probably not mentioning everyone who said something to this effect, but thanks go out to Michael Wadsworth, Michael Jundy, Max Thompson, and likely even many more, to be perfectly candid, for the underlying theme that sparked this week's. Anyway, so the question is this. The advent of high-quality, low-opportunity cost black pip cards in Wave 5 seems to spell an end for the blue-heavy and tough decks of the prior metagame. Is this end one that will be hard to march back from, or does it signify a change in philosophy that must take place for blue-based decks in the future?
Yeah, so it's the latter. Like, there's no question about it. With all the pierce and all the direct damage, and of course, belligerence. There's no way you're not taking damage anymore. There's no way you can just turtle around and just chip six. You can't do that anymore. You basically have to utilize as much of the blue that you're flipping into aggressive power that basically allows you to outpace your opponents. So things like leap into battle, pounce, crankcase, bigger they are, those types of things where you get big, beefy attackers, but also a sizable amount of defense. Those are the routes you need to take if you want to take a blue-centric deck out into the world as we see it currently. So, yeah, I don't know if that's something we can't march back, because honestly, Wave 6 could just change everything and just make blue strong again, because remember, Wave 3 and 4 came with secret actions, and during those waves, those cards were uninteractable in any way, shape, or form. So something like that could happen. I don't know. I don't know the details, but yeah, it's basically you just have to change the way you play blue decks from now, and you can't just turtle. You can't hide behind your castle. You have to actually shoot the cannons, and you have to actually kill things. So.
Yeah, I think the issue is there's not enough cannons to really shoot outside of Pounce. I mean, like, that guy can attack for a lot. However, that takes a little bit of time and resources to build into that, and then you're not really able, you can't defend a 12 life character for very long. You might get 2 swings with that guy. The format is so aggressive, and between counter espionage and belligerence and the direct damage and just, hey, here's a lot of bold with a lot of black pips. I mean, blue is definitely neutered, and I think it's going to take Wave 6 to kind of bring it back. I don't know that we've seen any top tier blue deck, at least not from us and not from anyone else. There's, some good shells out there and all that, but I don't know that they can really battle against the 4 pillars. It's too much. It's too overwhelming. I think blue just needs some more tools. Stable cover is great, but it being a blank is really hard on them. Hiding spot, like, hey, pierce my other guy, maybe. Great, but it's a blank again. So
it's not a blank. Those are black pip cards.
No, I get it, but when I say blank, I mean not that it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't have a blue pip, because that's the significant pip color. And okay, like, you're playing that, all right, and now I'm playing Autobot, so I need at least 1 reflect damage floating around in there to try and take out Sky Shadow so he doesn't get to hit me with the big guy. Okay, there's another blank. And, I feel like you have Night Racer and some other cards that like these secret actions, but you don't have the blue pips to help defend anything. So blue is easily the weakest color right now. Out of the 3, just it can't really hold up. It just doesn't have the tools. Like, you can't hide behind your castle because the stone wall of your castle is made of mud, and they just like blow right through it. It doesn't even matter. It'd be really cool to see a secret action that had a blue pip that was a stable cover without the defense bonus on it, or a blue pip that -3 pierce to your opponent, or you don't take direct damage this turn, one of your characters doesn't, or something like that. Something that gave you more options, because it also feels like if you don't have the exact right secret action at the exact right time, well, these decks are just going to run over you. They're too aggro, and there's too much direct damage, there's too much pierce, so you can't block it. And all the while you're trying to play blue, how are you attacking them for as much? As we were already talking about earlier in the podcast, you have all these new aggressive characters that have like a natural 2 defense and higher health. Well, you're not attacking for enough because you're a blue deck already. So I think that makes it really difficult too to make it work with blue right now. Wave 6 could change everything, and I hope it does. It's interesting to see some of the new deck archetypes form up in Wave 5, and I think Titan Master's Attack is easily the most interesting set that they've ever put out. It's pretty brilliant the way they've made it, and I can't wait for Wave 6 and hopefully a return to blue being at least equal with black and orange, because right now it definitely is not.
Yeah, I do want to put a disclaimer though. We have all three of us, we've played in tournaments before, and we have all at least top 8 one tournament with a blue deck. So it's not impossible, but it's very hard. It's very grindy, and if you misplay once, you could probably just be out of the top cut. I know I played multiple tournaments with blue decks, and I just misplayed, and it was just over. So it's
really punishing.
This format is very, very aggressive and very fast. So you need to know how you're going to tackle it from both a deck building point and a playing aspect of it. So
you got to know your matchups really well. Mm-hmm. And it does feel like cards like Peace Through Tyranny, you know, hey, I know this matchup really, really, really well, but if they play Peace Through Tyranny and get Biggie Sky Shadow out in his combined form, I'm probably going to lose. And like that's another reason not to play blue. It's like, they draw their Peace Through Tyranny and you might just lose because you can't stop it. People are like, oh, you can play Infiltrate. Well, cool. Yeah, you better have Infiltrate down at the exact time that they play Peace Through Tyranny. Yeah, I guess it could work that way, but that's probably not likely to happen. So
you just gotta have Spy Master's Ruse too. It's that easy.
Yeah. You only need 2 cards.
Yeah, you only need 2 cards, and to have them early enough in the game that it matters. That's
exactly.
So I uncharacteristically for me, I think I'm going to have a pretty short response here. I think most people are probably anticipating me talking for the next 20 minutes or so, but I think it's the latter too. I don't think it's impossible to march back from. First of all, we don't know what kind of tools WotC has available to them in order to remedy things that we might see as problematic gameplay patterns or unfun gameplay patterns. My only worry is that the thing that they're intending to do is continue this like spike in HP, right? Because I think if you like map the game over time, you'll see that the average HP per character has like marched upward, which I think was necessary, but I'm worried about it being a continuing trend for too long because I think you can approach pretty dangerous levels, and there are certain characters who are already kind of doing so. Regardless of that, I think that the change of velocity just has to be that you really need to be, I mean, we talked about this for forever, right? That like you can't play really control anymore. You can play mid-range. I think the advent of Percy being a pretty much a centerpiece character in all of the blue decks that have had success in this wave, or even a moderate amount of success in this wave, is pretty exemplary of this. Because what Percy does is he functions as an engine piece in your deck by being a character who is a relevant attacker and a card advantage engine. But he does so at a lower star cost than basically every other character who has served that purpose in the game up until this point, except for Cliffjumper Renegade Warrior, who has 2 faults. 1, he's an Autobot. And 2, he has low health for 8 stars. When he was first printed, he had incredible health for 8 stars. But as the game has marched onward, his health bar has been rendered a little bit less optimal, a little more obsolete, right? So, and the fact he also makes you play cars, which aren't necessarily the best archetype otherwise. So I think those are the things you really have to do. Is you have to lean on damage. You can't play control. Play mid-range. Tough is fine if it's inborn on your characters, but you shouldn't be playing any armors or actions that are really granting it outside of maybe hidden fortification in the sideboard if you're running into blue mirrors of all things. But those are my pieces of advice. Is just evolve. We'll get through this. We'll get through this dirtily, players, I promise. Okay, I think that'll bring us to the close of episode 22 of the Transform Your Game podcast. We've got 3 shout-outs this week. One, first and most importantly, to you, the listeners at home, for continuing to give us reason to try and cover as much as we can with a competitive point of view in regard to the TFTCG strategy kind of like world. 2, to our absent member, Joel, we miss you dearly. Your hey there's and world jokes will not be, present in this episode, but I'm sure you'll make up for it in the next one. And number 3, to our newest member, Matthew Brower, who didn't join us today, but who is absolutely here in spirit, and I'm sure we'll cycle in not too long. Seriously, though, we here at the Transform Your Game greatly appreciate all of you out there in the ether listening, whatever platform you're on. You can find our other episodes and more down the line on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever your podcast needs get met. There will certainly be some links in the description for you to help you out there. And if you found the input information here valuable, you can find more strategy, analysis, tournament reports, and more like it at transformyourgame.net. We look forward to being back to speak to all y'all next week, but until that time, clear eyes, flip bots, can't lose.